Welcome everybody. My name is Adam Krieger with Preferred Strategies. I'll be walking through today's webinar on Microsoft PowerPivot for JD Edwards. Quick, easy, and cost-effective ad hoc reporting. A few things first, agenda today. We'll start with a little brief overview about our company, some of the JD Edwards data model complexities, get into an overview of what PowerPivot is, and what our BI Quick Launch for JD Edwards is regarding PowerPivot. Most of the time we'll spend today will be in live demonstration, and then we'll come back after that and finish up with demonstrating some of the SharePoint integration, and Q&A. We'll also announce the gift card winner towards the end of the session. So a few things logistics-wise. If the GoToMeeting panel is taking up portion of your real estate on your screen, there should be a little white arrow in an orange box at the top that you can minimize that to a little small bar. So you can go ahead and do that to minimize it. The other thing is that when we address the questions, we'll answer questions that have been posted there in the Q&A panel. So feel free to, as we're going along, just type your questions into the GoToMeeting panel. And then we'll, like I said, we'll approach those at the end. So Preferred Strategies, we've been around since 2002. We focus on JD Edwards as an application and ERP, and the reporting and BI analytics on top of that. So unlike other reporting BI software companies, we didn't build our own BI software per se. We've chosen to leverage the market leaders out there, Microsoft, Oracle, Business Objects, and build Jumpstarts for JD Edwards with those solutions. So that's one of the things that we're demonstrating today with PowerPivot, is showing how to leverage our Jumpstart on top of that free software from Microsoft. So we have and we provide solutions for real-time direct connect access to JD Edwards data with these solutions, as well as if you wanted to replicate the data, move it offline to another repository for reporting, we support that. Or if you want to restructure JD Edwards data into a true star schema data warehouse, we support that as well. So those are the areas we do have Jumpstarts. And from an implementation and services perspective, we kind of a full service organization to help the resellers, but also implementation, installation, configuration services, and then ongoing consulting for whatever your needs may be, as well as training. So what are some of the data model complexities with JDE? For one, there's thousands of tables in the model. A lot of them have cryptic names, F0006 for the business unit master, GBOBJ for the object account. Julian dates are stored in a Julian format, amounts and units stored without decimals. Then to build those time-based calculations, which are used heavily for reporting, month-to-date, quarter-to-date, year-to-date, actuals, budgets, things like that. UDCs. A lot of these things aren't really delivered out of the box when you're doing reporting, and it has to be addressed by the BI or reporting software that you're using. So these are kind of the challenges that every JD Edwards customer faces. How they get out that data is something that everybody has to kind of figure out. So as I mentioned before, we support the three primary approaches to BI. If you want to connect BI and reporting directly against JD Edwards, what we're showing you today is direct connected to JDE. We support that if you want to, again, move to what we call an operational data store, which is more of like a mirror of JDE, but you're no longer hitting your production system. That's kind of more of a replicated data set. Or if you're going to a data warehouse, it's where it's more of a transformed data set into a star schema type structure. There's various types of schemas, but and each of those has their own pros and cons, and it's not really the intention of today's session to get into detail about these three, but just something I wanted to point out that we do support all three in what we're showing you today. So what is Microsoft PowerPivot? PowerPivot's a plugin that became available with Office 2010, and it's actually part of the build already with Office Excel 2013. So we'll show briefly how to go and get access to that and how to turn it on within Excel or over the web. But it's from Microsoft, and if you use pivot tables, it's really kind of automating and creating connections and allowing some modeling of data within an engine that will reside within your spreadsheet. It can also then be pushed into what's called a tabular model, which is a server-based model if you wanted to have that refreshing of data take place on the server side versus from an individual's desktop. So regardless, that's kind of what happened. We'll explain this a little bit more when we get into the live demo. But it really gives users from Excel the ad hoc drag and drop type analysis very easily, and then you want to refresh the data. It's not a copy and paste or import export of data. It's a connection back that allows you to refresh and verify, validate that the data that's coming across is accurate, because it can go right back to whatever source you define. So what is our Jumpstart for JD Edwards regarding PowerPivot? So they're kind of, if you break out into 3 different layers. On the data layer, we've created some views, and these views do some of the manipulation or kind of translation that needs to take place to get the data from JD in a usable format, in a friendly format for reporting. Then within the PowerPivot, we've built out models where we've then done a lot of additional calculations and relating data to some degree there, and building out those calculations like we talked about the month-to-date, year-to-date, quarter-to-date, all that stuff. And then the reporting layer, we've actually built out some dashboards and reports on top of that, with basically as a part of the model as well. And we'll kind of show you those as we go through the demo today. So what are the views? Again, what do they address? Well, again, of those thousands of tables by the different subject areas and modules of JD Edwards, we've defined already related views with already the applicable related tables where things need to be related with equal joins, left outer joins. That's all addressed by the views. Naming conventions, so you're not going to get the cryptic names. You'll get something that's more logical, like a table name will show something. And some of these the views we deliver will actually be a combination of 5 or 10 tables in some cases, already related within some of the views. The object account, instead of seeing the cryptic alias of JDE, you'll see the long names. And Julian dates will be converted to a Gregorian date. Amounts and units we stored and delivered via with the correct decimal calculations as well. As far as the time-based measures, in some cases, we restructure the data in a way to facilitate these calculations. A lot of times, we talk about month-to-date, quarter-to-date, year-to-date. These are calculations that are mostly driven from some type of user response or variable parameter. So I'm a user and I choose, the year and I choose the period, and then I want the calculation of year-to-date to be based on, if I choose June of 2014, to all of a sudden I'll be calculating, year-to-date via, through June of 2014. So what we're doing in the views is facilitating a way to get that data, so that could be easily calculated by the tool. UDC descriptions, again, another one of the things, and field data type mismatches. So sometimes in JD Edwards, especially in a good example, let's say subledgers, you've got a text object in one table, maybe relating to a numeric object in another table, different number of characters, and so a lot of that stuff is things that we address again in our views as well. The models, we've got some canned examples that are already, and as part of the process, we take these models and get them mapped to your data, map the views on your side, get the models mapped to those views, and then you're running and dragging and dropping, reports, ad hoc reporting very quickly and easily. So we're going to focus on the live demonstration. For those of you who may not be extremely familiar with pivot tables, we'll start by demonstrating kind of what is a pivot table and how would you build a pivot table, which is not with PowerPivot yet, and then we'll kind of open up and open one of our models and kind of break down, where PowerPivot comes into play. The 2 modules that we're going to look at today are sales and financials, and then we'll also kind of show a brief intro on some SharePoint integration. We do have other modules, so if you wanted to get a demonstration for something outside of sales and financials, just reach out to us. I think there'll be a survey prompting you at the end. We'd be happy to do a one-on-one, but we do support the full financial suite: GL, AP, AR, sales, inventory, procurement, job cost, enterprise asset management, HR, payroll, manufacturing, property management. So we cover pretty much. I think there's 14 modules now that we have that we deliver. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to open up an Excel file here. I'm going to open up a spreadsheet, and this is just an example of a spreadsheet with some data. And this is almost like data. Let's say that was just you did an export from JDE, or you did an export for some other tool, or you had just this data and you copied and pasted it here. It's not in any way connected back to JDE. But if you had, let's say, just a dump of data, if I go ahead and just hold just kind of hold up a second. Let's try this again. My Excel is not responding. Let me go ahead and try this one more time. Okay. So let's just take this block of data. We highlight the block of data. And if you just did this anytime in Excel, and for those of you who use pivot table, this is probably very familiar to you. But if you go ahead and do an insert, and you'll notice here pivot table is an option here. So if we choose pivot table, right, here's my range, choose OK. In this case now we're kind of have this ability to, as this pivot table is selected, on the right will be a list of those different kind of data that was there. So let's say we wanted to look at, sold to address name. I'll drag that down to my rows. And I can see a breakdown, let's say, by customer. If I go down and pull in maybe the extended amount, right, I can kind of see the dollars there. What if we want to see the sales by customer then for each of the last several years here? So if I go down and grab maybe fiscal year, I'll bring that down to my rows. Right, so now I can see within each customer, here's the sales by year. We can go in here and format this to be currency. So now we've got, again, our sales dollars. Now I'm seeing this by customer and then break down for each year. If I want to drag the year up above the customer, I can now see each year and then the sales by customer. If I want to go ahead and move the year out to a column, now I can actually see the customer. And then, so this is in essence a pivot table. It allows you to be able to slice and dice data by just dragging and dropping between rows, columns. It's aggregating the data. So as you can see here, there's aggregated data set of 10 rows of data. But if I look at the data tab where that resided, there might have been thousands of rows of data that were being aggregated to demonstrate what's inside of that pivot table. Okay, so this is just a standard pivot table. This is something that's been part of Excel for quite some time. So what is PowerPivot, right? Let's talk about that for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this again. Reopen up Excel, and we're going to go ahead and start by looking at a sales model here. Okay, and we'll come back and walk through this together in a minute. But when you actually enable PowerPivot, so if you're using Excel 2013, if you go to File and choose Options and go to Add-ins and go down here to COM Add-ins, you'll see a couple options here: Microsoft Office PowerPivot Excel 2013 and then PowerView. We'll actually show you both of those, and those are both kind of shared functionality within kind of the PowerPivot family there. So I would just check those boxes. Those will, by default, will not be enabled when you load up Excel. So you want to go in and enable those, and then they'll be. So once you enable those, you'll notice a PowerPivot menu option will be available inside of your spreadsheet. Now, just real quick before we take it another step further, if you were on Excel 2010, if you go to PowerPivot.com. So just type in www.powerpivot.com. It'll redirect you to Microsoft's site to this page here, and if you choose Download PowerPivot, it'll navigate you or send you to another page here where you can walk through, make sure you have some requirements with .NET Framework and Visual Studio tools, and then you can go ahead and download and install the PowerPivot plugin. So if you have any issues with this, we'd be happy to help. But that's kind of where you can get to it if you're on 2010. And like I said, 2013, it's actually already there. You just have to enable the add-in. So let's take a look. If I click on the PowerPivot menu option, and then you'll notice a Manage. So I choose Manage. This is going to open up a behind-the-scenes view of this specific data model. Okay. So within this, so before I've already gone in, this is one of our out-of-box models, so we've already defined some relationships, already connected to our views, and already have some calculations being addressed here. But if you were to start from scratch, you would basically have a blank canvas here and a blank window. If you go to From Other Sources, you can see here is where the ability, so it's not, because this is Microsoft, doesn't mean we can only connect to Microsoft SQL Server. You can connect to data that's on SQL Server, Azure, Access, Oracle, DB2, other various types of data. Also OLEDB, ODBC. So if it's something that's OLEDB compliant, should be able to be addressed. And even going from other Excel spreadsheets if you wanted. So there's a variety of ways to get at the data. Of course, for us, we support JD Edwards that runs on Oracle, DB2, and SQL Server. So we support all three of those with our models. So that's kind of how you would connect to the data. If I click here on Diagram View, you'll notice where each of these different subsets of data, you can relate the data together. And so that's kind of allows you where you can kind of create relationships, and each of these can be its own connection to a different source. So this would be allow you to really pull in data from JDE, non-JDE data sources in the same model if you wanted to. So you could have one connection going to SQL Server, another connection going to DB2, Oracle, all of those combined within one model and related. Okay. So let's go. The other thing to point out, go back to the data view, some of these calculations like year-to-date, quarter-date, so all these pre-aggregated calculations that are all driven from, you'll see a user prompt within Excel in a minute. So that's one of the things that we're doing is we're defining those calculations, again, as part of the model. So we're looking at this. Let's go back. Before we get started, one of the things, if you open one of these up and you say, I want to refresh the data. So I want to go out there and refresh from what's in JDE at this moment. If I go to Data and choose Refresh All, first thing it's going to do is it's going to prompt me for a logon, because again, we have a connection, but we have to validate that we're a viable user and our rights are granted before it'll let us pull back the data from JDE. So I'll go ahead and log in there. You'll notice down here it says retrieving data, processing data. So it's going in, it's going based on all the different queries that have been defined in the model, it's going to go out there, grab all the data, and bring it back to this specific spreadsheet. So now, if I were refreshing this and I just had new orders based on what the model's being asked to filter down to, that data would be returned here. So I'm looking at total sales. Here's by product group, by customer, by region, sales rep, channel. Again, all this can be tailored to whatever you would want to do as to analyze. But so what does one of our models deliver? So we have and we'll walk through these different tabs, but typically a charts tab, almost like a dashboard tab. We've got a pivot table drill down tab already, and an ad hoc tab, and we're kind of walk through these together. Let's start with the analysis. So there's also a slicers tab, which is all kind of those predefined filters. So these are, if you go in with Excel, and you may have used these, insert and choose a slicer, right? These are kind of some predefined filters on a data set. So these are directly linked to the model that's here within PowerPivot. So let's say I want to look at just 2009 data, and I want to look at 2009 data just for Central Region. Okay, so what it's doing is it's actually going to filter down the remaining data set to just 2009 and just Central Region. Okay, so you could go back and forth and check different filters and get an immediate type analysis based on those specific filters. If I go to the Trends tab, I can see now I've got it, sales trend, gross profit, and percent, and I can break down by year. What if I wanted to look at my 2009 compared to my 2008? I go back to slicers, hold Control, and choose 2008. It'll now actually include both 2009 and 2008 in my analysis. So now if I come back to this chart, I can see my trending year over year with those two options. Okay. So I go to the sales drill down. So here's kind of now more of a familiar pivot table, not just some charts. So in this case, we've got a pivot table that's already defined. If I click on this pivot table on the right, you'll see some options here. If I click on, you'll see a lot of different categories. So if we go in and click, let's say, on sales, we'll see ship dates and company and century and document number and order number, a variety of different things related to sales that we could just drag and drop into, our pivot table here, and we're going to go and show you that here in the next minute or so. So let's say we've got product group broken down by subgroup. Drill into that. Maybe we get down to the product. Down to product, get a breakdown by customer. Okay, so again, looking at my pivot table, what if I wanted my pivot table to show customer first and then by product group? So if I go ahead and just drag my customer all the way to the top, I can see now if I wanted to go ahead and see and just do expand collapse, I can now actually see each of my customers first and then my breakdown of my different product groups there. Okay. So that's kind of a real quick high level how you can manipulate something that's already there. Let's go ahead and build something new from scratch. Let's say we want to look at my year-to-date sales by customer, by product group for this year, year-to-date versus last year, year-to-date. Okay, so if we go to sales ad hoc, we'll go ahead and I'll just click on the pivot table here. Now this is kind of like a blank canvas, so this would be where you go maybe to build a new report from scratch, or you got asked a question and one of your other charts or pivot tables didn't already have defined of what you wanted. So in this case, go ahead and we'll choose all here. So let's go down to our dim sales, and this would be if I scroll down, I might see our ship to address name and sold to address name. So I'm going to go ahead and grab sold to address name down to my rows. All right, and then I'm going to go down and let's grab our year-to-date measures, and I might grab our current year-to-date extended amount, and I'll click the prior year-to-date extended amount as well. So we can kind of see here year-over-year sales by customer. If we want to then see within each customer, again, the breakdown by product group, we can go up here to our item codes, maybe our product group description, drag that down, and now we can kind of see, again, the sales there by each product group within each customer. Let's go ahead and collapse this. Okay. While I've got this pivot table selected, if I go here, insert, and just insert a chart, right, now I can actually go ahead and we'll drop a chart right here. Oops. I hit the wrong button there. Sorry. Let's come back to that. All right, so we go ahead, we select our chart, and if we want to go ahead and just give it a little bit more of a nice flavor to it, say remove our, all right, so now we've got this chart that's built atop the pivot table. So that's kind of a, in a nutshell, you can start building out your own. You can duplicate this tab just like you can in a spreadsheet and build multiple flavors, multiple reports. Again, when you go do a data refresh, it'll go back and refresh everything across all your different tabs, right? So this PowerPivot's a way to really get away from the manual process that a lot of companies engage when they get into doing things within Excel. Okay. The last thing I want to show in this model is on the sales dashboard. So this tab is actually showing you the Power View, which again was one of the other things you'd have to enable. This unfortunately is only available with 2013 and not available with 2010. We'll go ahead and build and rebuild this dashboard here in 5 minutes together as one of our next steps here at the demo. But just to kind of give you a flavor, so I've got here maybe sales, and I'm filtering this down. If I look at my sales reps, I want to add another sales rep, right? So it's giving my sales broken down by customer, by channel, maybe down here by product group and subgroup. If we click on the different product groups, maybe our subgroup breakdown will be displayed. Or I can even see, our sales here by, these are broken down by product group as well, for those customers broken down by state, okay? So this is a real quick way to just create some dashboard type views as well. If you use SharePoint, all this can be published into SharePoint and be leveraged with Excel services and SharePoint. So all the functionality that we've been demonstrating here in Excel can be available there within SharePoint as well. So let's go ahead and if we're going to build a new one of these dashboards. So let's go ahead as a next step and walk through that together. So I go here to Insert and choose Power View. It's going to open up a new tab here, Power View 3. We can rename it just like we rename any other tab in our spreadsheet. Let's go ahead and start by giving this a title. Okay. And if we go into let's grab our first block, I don't know if you remember, was a breakdown by our customer. So I'll grab sold to customer name, and I'll drag it onto this white canvas over here. And let's go ahead and next let's go ahead and grab and make this say maybe extended amount, our gross profit, maybe in a gross profit percent. Okay. Go ahead and just shrink up that a little bit. So that was our first table, which is giving us an aggregated data set for our sales, gross profit, and percent for each customer. We'd add a pie chart by channel right next to that. So now if I go to sold to kept codes, and we'll look at maybe our channel, I'll just drag that in to the white canvas right there to the right of that. And this says let's do this as maybe gross profit. So we'll go in and just say I want gross profit, and I can either click on the checkbox or just drag that right below, and it'll put it in that table. If I have this table selected here, I can go to other charts and choose a pie chart, and it'll go ahead and convert this into a pie chart, and we're going to go ahead and stretch that across as well. So now let's say we wanted that other bar chart down, which is a product group and subgroup. So if we go up here to our item codes and say, let's say I want my product group description, I'll just drag that in over here. Let me stretch this guy across, and maybe I want this to be, take about any of that about space. So I got product group. Let's go ahead and grab our subgroup in there as well. And let's make this by extended amount. So we'll go down to our, all right. So now we've got this table. If we want, we can go in and add this tile by here. So I grabbed product group into this tile by. Right, you'll see it now gives you this ability to go in and by clicking on the different tiles, which are my product groups, I can see my breakdown of my subgroup down below. If I click back on this table here, we can go ahead and make this a stat column chart as well. And what if we wanted not these tiles to be at the top, but I want those to be at the bottom? So I can choose a different type of tile flow and go in here and stretch this guy as well. Okay, so just like before, we go ahead and just drill down below and we'll get the breakdown. Last thing we had was a map chart here. So if we go in back to our sold to codes, and I'll grab my mail state, drag that in, and let's go ahead and look at that with our extended amount as well. Okay, and if we go in here, I just got this selected and choose map, it'll convert this into a US map. And if we wanted to just actually see the pies within this broken down, so right now this is just showing us for each of the different states, maybe we wanted to say that by product group as well. So we'll go ahead and grab our product group description, drag that down to our color, and now you can see, again, each of those pies by state is now broken down by product group. Okay, so now we've got our quick dashboard. Let's say we want this, though, to be, I want to be able to select a year to filter this dashboard, or select a sales rep to filter this dashboard. So we'll go up here to dates and choose calendar year. I'll go ahead and drag that in here. And if we go ahead and just choose 2009, it'll actually then filter down the data just to 2009. And if we then go in and say, I also want to be able to get a breakdown by sales rep, just drag that over here to my filter section, and now I can go ahead and start choosing a specific sales rep or multiple sales reps if we want. Okay, and so that kind of gives us that breakdown. You can also drill in here as well. So if I'm looking at this and I say, okay, I want to look at just the retail channel. If I click on this pie chart, it creates a filter on retail, and so all my other remaining charts are filtered down to just retail as well, and vice versa. If I go ahead and click on one of these, it'll actually filter down to just the pieces of the other elements that are just for that specific product group as well. Okay. So that, in a nutshell, is PowerPivot and PowerView. So next thing I want to do was we'll show you another example in the financial area, because some customers will obviously want to use this for financial reporting, and then we'll show you this on SharePoint as well. Okay, so let me go ahead and close out of here. And now we'll go ahead and open up. So just like before, let's say we're looking at this, and I go back to my slicers. I want to look at, say, period 12 instead of period 6. So we look at period 12, update the data, let it complete that, refreshing across all my different charts and pivot tables. So now we're looking at this data. In this case, one of our outboxing, the revenue, gross profit, overhead, net income. Again, and the intention is that these could all be tailored to what each customer requirements would be. So this is kind of the charts tab. If I go over to the next one, here's an example of a drill down tab. We can kind of get the breakdown there. The income statement. So this is where, if you start looking at like more of a traditional P&L, right? So the income statements, balance sheets, they're row-based. So we've come up with certain techniques of how to build those types of reports within the PowerPivot solution. So here, revenue and cost, then break down. You get a summary for gross profit, SG&A. You get down income before taxes, and net income. Right? So every company's gonna be a little different on how they organize their financial reports, and that's something obviously that we work with to make sure everybody has those being addressed. I go down here to, let's say, employee expenses. Right now I drill in, I see employee expenses broken down by object account. If I choose, let's say, straight time, I can see the breakdown by, say, business unit. But what if we wanted to actually see that business unit first and then by object account? So we could actually go in here, and if I just move that above in the pivot table, collapse this. Now I can actually see within employee expenses that breakdown by business unit or division or whatever you would want to analyze the data by. So it's very flexible on being able to see and analyze the data. We can also do a blend here, and we have this one of our out-of-box models that blend the balance file within JDE as well as the detail. So we could actually drill down within this pivot table from the summary P&L all the way down into the GL transactions, to the document numbers, to the address numbers, names, and invoices, and purchase orders, and things like that. So it's very, very powerful. If we go to the next tab, here we're looking at, let's say, a consolidating view, right? So in this case, we've got maybe our divisions as different columns. If we want to go ahead and look at, quarter to date, we could do that. Back to year to date. If we want to look at maybe different ledger types, and this could all be, some customers might have different forecasts, so they might want to be able to analyze these by different forecast ledgers that they just select there on the fly and dynamically filter down the data. Okay, here's a quarterly view, so maybe quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, total year, budget, and then with the remaining budget maybe, and variance. Maybe you got a monthly 12-month report as well. So these are kind of just the other flavors. If I go here to the ad hoc, just to show you, so within the financials, we've got these dimensions for the things like count, business unit, company, subledger descriptions. We've got the codes, the business unit CAC code. So these would be, in essence, if BCAC code 1 was region, it would say region or division or business segment. So those would be relatable to what makes sense for your organization. And then we've got the year and period and other breakdowns of the dates as well. And then from the amounts and units, if I go here, you can see, again, our terminology, CY is always current year, PY is prior year. We have month to date, actual budgets we then predefined for revenue, gross profit, overheads. So I think there's probably hundreds of calculations, if not 1,000 calculations going on behind the scenes of this model for financials. So that's, again, part of what we deliver and map to your data as part of the process. So we've kind of shown you, like I said, if you wanted to follow up and look at something in a specific module, we'd be happy to do a follow-up with you. Let's go ahead and take a quick peek at SharePoint. So for those companies that are using SharePoint or look to use SharePoint, go ahead and just open that up. So if I log into SharePoint, there's actually a PowerPivot gallery. You can actually save these to any of the folders out there that you like, but there's actually a PowerPivot gallery within SharePoint. If I just navigate to these different folders here, so I'm actually over SharePoint via the web, and if we go ahead and open up one of these within Excel services, like you said, you'll see something very familiar to what we were looking at in Excel. We had published that report, and now your users can go in and, again, by just clicking on these, you can still analyze and slice and dice the data, filtering it down just like you would normally, and the data is going to be refreshing based on that. So you have all that interactive nature, and you can also even build pivot tables here within the PowerPivot over the web and SharePoint as well. So let's go back and see. So that was kind of the major things that we wanted to share today. Like I said, there's I think 14 modules, and I'd be happy to send you a breakdown of that. So we just went to brief intro on the SharePoint side, also the financials. So if you want to deliver financials out there in SharePoint, there's also, I didn't show it, there's an ability to refresh the data, so you can schedule reports and have them refresh on an interval, or refresh them on SharePoint on demand. So rather than having to open up an Excel and refresh from Excel, you can refresh reports right there from within SharePoint. We do have a data sheet and a catalog that we'd be happy to share. If you're interested, just let us know. Maybe specify that in your survey. As far as upcoming webinars, we have next week 2 business objects and crystal reports for J.D. Edwards, where we'll focus on business objects, BI, and reporting, and our Jumpstart around that. And then if you're really interested in some data warehousing around J.D. Edwards, we're demonstrating our Jumpstart for data warehouse next Wednesday. So if you want us to even register, you would be happy to just specify that in the survey. We also have some Collaborate presentations coming up next month in Vegas. So if you're going to be there at the show, we'd love to see you there. The first is on Tuesday we're doing a J.D. Edwards data warehousing for reporting and business intelligence at 4:15. At 4:30 on Wednesday we're doing a Microsoft Excel on steroids, very similar to the one we just did today. And we'll be doing that at the conference. And on Thursday we've got a BI Publisher session for how to leverage the free BI Publisher licenses for BI Publisher Interactive. That's at 3 o'clock on Thursday. And then one of the ones that we're definitely most looking forward to is a joint presentation with Cliff Bar. Cliff Bar and Company, they've implemented some of our data warehousing and PowerPivot strategies, and they're doing a demonstration on Friday morning of how it's worked out for them. So if you're going to be at the show, I definitely highly recommend all the sessions, but definitely if you had to pick one of the 4, Cliff Bars would be definitely one you don't want to miss.